You are a Sith apprentice in an unspecified time period, tasked with hunting Jedi and molding galactic politics to the will of the Sith. You need a spacecraft to haul you around, something both intimidating enough to signal your sinister intentions, and subtle enough that it won't attract too much attention from the authorities. With the tens of thousands of ships on the market, how could you possibly choose? Stick around for my recommendations. I'm Joey from Radio Free Coruscant, and these are the best ships for Sith in Star Wars. Star Courier. We'll start with the Republic Sinar Systems Star Courier, because while I was planning to avoid ships manufactured specifically for the Sith, the Star Courier is, in some versions of its backstory, an off-the-shelf ship model that would be perfect to modify into a Sith transport. Which is precisely what Palpatine did with the Scimitar, the ship he gifted to his apprentice Maul. While the Scimitar was modified with heavy weapons and a cloaking device, different modifications, or even no modifications, would still suit a Sith well if the stakes were lower than they were for Sidious and Maul. Even stock, it still had some weapons and extremely powerful sensors, and in Legends at least, it was literally designed by a Sith, specifically Darth Tenebrous. His public persona, Ruges Gnome, was a ship designer catering to wealthy elites, and he created the Star Courier both for his own Sith needs, and to sell to and connect with prominent businessmen across the galaxy. And just as Plagueis commissioned a highly customized courier for Palpatine, who really only wanted it for Maul, you too could commission one for yourself or your apprentice, or your apprentice's secret apprentice that was going to replace you. The Star Courier measured 26.5 meters long by about 18 meters wide and 9 meters tall. The rest of its stock stats are unknown, but the Scimitar likely didn't deviate too far from most of them. That had a top speed of 1,180 km per hour and a Class 1.5 hyperdrive. It was armed with 6 concealed laser cannons, though I imagine a stock Star Courier would have probably only had 2. It required only 1 crew member, the pilot, and could carry 6 passengers, 2.5 tons of cargo, and 30 days of consumables, perfect for most clandestine Sith missions. The Scimitar was valued at 55 million credits, but that was probably mostly due to its Stygium cloaking device, one of the smallest and most powerful ever made at the time. A stock Star Courier would likely still have been pretty expensive due to its rich target audience, probably around 300,000 credits. CHM-series light freighter. For a more budget-friendly option, I think a Sith would be happy with a sub-pro CHM-series light freighter. I believe that the ideal Sith starship is a very delicate blend of innocuous yet intimidating. Some Sith ships lean more towards the mundane, like the Star Courier, while others lean more imposing, like the Sith ships in Star Wars Visions. But with its sharp angles and unusual shape, the CHM manages to land perfectly in the middle. Bounty hunter Fennec Shand used a CHM in the early Imperial era, and the requirements for Sith ships are very similar to those of bounty hunter ships, so I think a Sith looking to keep a lower profile would find the CHM a compelling option. Most of the stats of the CHM are unknown, but it measured 30.8 meters long by about 24 meters wide and 10.5 tall. It likely had a top speed around 900 km per hour and a Class 2 hyperdrive. The ship required 1 pilot and could carry at least 3 passengers, probably about 50 tons of cargo, and 1 month of consumables. We don't know if the CHM was armed by default, but Fennec's Outcast had what appears to be a light laser cannon and some kind of very heavy weapon. Based on its size, it may have been a heavy laser cannon, heavy ion cannon, repeating blaster, or possibly even a light turbo laser. I would assume at least this weapon, and possibly the light laser, were added by Shand, but you could add these or anything else you wanted to your CHM series too. Finally, its price was unknown as well, but I would guess somewhere in the range of 100,000 credits. Rogue-class Gunship. Not every Sith is going to need or want something big enough to carry passengers and cargo. Asajj Ventress used a Genevex starfighter during her time as a Sith acolyte, and a starfighter-sized personal transport of some kind afterward. Darth Vader used several starfighters throughout his tenure, and the Stranger favored a starfighter-sized racing vessel. There is no clear best starfighter for a Sith, and your options would depend entirely on when you are in the timeline, but the one I would recommend for the Skywalker Saga era would be the Bactoid Armor Workshop Rogue-class Porax 38. These were manufactured by the more openly Sith-aligned Confederacy of Independent Systems, and like the CHM, one was used by a famous bounty hunter. If it's good enough for Cad Bane to request one from Palpatine himself, then it should be good enough for any Sith looking for a starfighter as well. The Rogue-class Porax 38 measured 12.7 meters long by 12.88 wide and 2.71 tall. It allegedly had a top atmospheric speed of 61,000 kilometers per hour, over 17 times as fast as the highest atmospheric speed record set by any plane on Earth. While this stat is probably realistic for a sci-fi spacecraft, it is completely out of line with basically everything we know about starfighter speeds and must be rejected. I would guess it to have something more along the lines of 1,600 kilometers per hour instead. Still one of the fastest starfighters out there, but not completely ludicrous. The Rogue class had a Class II hyperdrive as well. It was decently well armed with 2 heavy laser cannons, but I would recommend you buy the updated Rogue-class gunship seen in The Mandalorian and Outlaws instead. We don't know what the gunship was officially armed with, but it appears to have 4 of the heavy lasers and 2 additional weapons, perhaps ion cannons. It also has a more heavily armored cockpit and larger engines, making it better all around. Finally, the Rogue could carry only 1 pilot, though its Wikipedia entry also amusingly lists a passenger capacity of, quote, 1 small droid and 1 baby, which I thought was pretty funny. Its price was unknown, but most fighters of its caliber cost in the range of 150,000 credits. Firespray 31. Of course, another famous bounty hunter ship would be ideal for Sith who would prefer to max out the intimidation factor of their ship. This, of course, is the Kuat Systems Engineering Firespray 31 class patrol and attack craft made famous by Jango and Boba Fett. This was one of the most powerful ships of its class, even off the assembly line, and with enough money it was possible to upgrade it to an absolutely outrageous degree. I don't think I have to justify why a scary-looking, heavily armed one-person attack craft would be perfect for a Sith, so let's move on to the stats. The Firespray 31 measured 21.5 meters tall by 21.3 meters wide and 7.8 long in flight, or 21.5 long and 7.8 tall on the ground. It had a top speed of 850 kilometers per hour and a Class III hyperdrive. It was fairly well armed with 2 laser cannons, 2 concussion missile launchers, and a tractor beam projector. Plus, it was possible to install much more, up to the twin rotating blaster cannons, twin laser cannons, concussion missile launchers, proton torpedo launchers, ion cannon, tractor beam projector, and mine layer seen on Boba Fett's Slave 1. Though of course all of that would no doubt eat into your storage space and cost a lot of money. But for a Sith in the right situation, or with the right mission, that could be worthwhile. The Firespray required only 1 crew and could carry 6 passengers. In its original role as a prison transport, these would be 2 guards and 4 prisoners, but it could be rearranged to have normal seating for 6 normal passengers instead. It also carried 70 tons of cargo and 1 month of consumables, and cost an exceptionally economical 80,000 credits. Eta-class Shuttle. And finally, one of the best ships for Sith in the galaxy is actually a Jedi ship, the Cygnus Spaceworks Eta-class Shuttle. While these were used by several departments of the Republic, they were most famous for their use by the Jedi. Hatred and contempt for the Jedi is a big part of Sith culture, and I think stealing and using a Jedi ship would be seen as a big insult to the Jedi by the Sith. After Vader lost his lightsaber on Mustafar, Palpatine made him hunt down a Jedi to steal a kyber crystal from to replace it, so I think this ritual could be expanded to ships as well. A Sith apprentice's first mission could be luring a Jedi team to his location to steal their ship. Furthermore, Darth Sidious was known to use a highly modified Eta-class on occasion, and while they were far from Sith, the Dark Jedi Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati used one after the Imperial era. Using this ship allowed them to impersonate Jedi and infiltrate a New Republic cruiser, a skill that would be extremely useful to a Sith. On top of all that, it was just an all-around good shuttle with decent weapons and carrying capacity. The Eta-class measured 14.2 meters long by about 28 meters wide and 21 meters tall in flight, or 10 wide and 17 tall landed. It had a Class 2 hyperdrive and a top atmospheric speed of 750 kilometers per hour. Cygnus Spaceworks recommended a crew of 3 with a pilot, co-pilot, and gunner, but it could be flown by a single pilot or even a droid with no issues. It was armed with 3 laser cannons and could carry 10 passengers and 2 months of consumables. It could supposedly also carry 100 tons of cargo, but considering that's about as much as an average light freighter, I suspect that might be a typo and it's supposed to carry only 10 tons. Finally, it had a fairly reasonable price of 100,000 credits, though any Sith worth their salt will be getting theirs for free from a Jedi. And those are 5 of the best ships for a Sith in Star Wars. Let me know which of these you would choose, or what else you would pick instead in the comments. I left out any Sith-specific ships, like those used by the ancient Sith Empire. Those could be a list for another day. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. RFC, out.